Do you guys remember back in the late 90s when the Washington Redskins signed Deion Sanders, Bruce Smith, and pulled off the Ricky Williams trade where they received 8 total draft picks? I barely do too because they messed it up. This is the story of the super team that could have been. Let's go back to 1998, a year before the trade and 2 years before the signings, where Washington had just lost 41-7 to the Vikings, and they were sitting at 0-7 heading into their bye week, losing by an average of 19 points per game. This team was terrible. The glory days of the early 90s were past them, and here sat a pathetic excuse for a professional football team. Except after the bye week, the team did not go all in for a tank. They would push to turn it around. Washington went on a 6-3 run to finish the season, and that included a 4-game win streak from weeks 13 to 16. This team was not dead, and people around the organization were able to keep their jobs because of it. Yes, they finished last in the division, but the season was not completely lost. And little did they know heading into the 1999 draft with the 5th overall pick due to a prior trade with the Carolina Panthers, Washington was about to pull off one of the most insane draft trades of all time. Here we are, 5th overall pick, and wow, that Mike Ditka guy sure does want Ricky Williams. I mean, he's coached Walter Payton before, so I'm sure he knows a good back when he sees one, and the Saints were desperate to move up and select him. They offered the Bengals a massive deal, but the Bengals were content with sitting with the 3rd pick. But when it came to the 5th pick, Washington got a trade offer that they physically, emotionally, and philosophically could not refuse. And that offer, as we all know, was the Saints' whole 1999 draft and their 1st and 3rd round picks the next year. Washington had hit the jackpot. Now with 6 new picks in 1999, including the 12th overall pick, they are set to replicate what Dallas did a decade prior and build a super team. And they started with a banger, trading up from pick 12 to pick 7 to draft one of the 2 Hall of Famers in this draft class, cornerback Champ Bailey. Yes, they gave up 4 picks in the move to draft Champ Bailey, so their draft stock was definitely hindered, but getting Champ Bailey to play with and under Darrell Green was a no-brainer. The improvement from 1998 showed immediately. Starting the year 5-4 was streets ahead of where the Redskins were at this time last season, but it did not end there. They finished the season 10-6, they won the NFC East, and were slated to play the Lions in their wild card matchup. This season was huge. Washington was successful after a down year and had the 2nd best offense in the league, putting up 27.7 points per game. Quarterback Brad Johnson threw for 4,005 yards and made the Pro Bowl, as running back Stephen Davis ran for 1,400 yards and 17 rushing touchdowns in 14 games, also earning a Pro Bowl nod. And as we all should remember, the Champ Bailey pick, well, he had an immediate impact his rookie year, grabbing 5 picks, proving himself to be a stud at the cornerback position. Their defense as an overall unit, though, was quite underwhelming. They let up 23.6 points per game, which was 24th in the league, so there was definitely work to do on that side of the ball. But Washington's defense had only given up 30-plus points twice in the last 8 games of the year, so they were definitely heading into the playoffs with momentum. In the wild card matchup versus the Lions, they won 27-13, featuring a fantastic game from running back Stephen Davis, and then proceeded to lose in the divisional round against the emerging Tampa Bay Buccaneers by 1 point. The morale of the 1999 season was that Washington had kept their momentum going from the 6-3 end in 1998 all the way to the 1999 draft. Now, how would they keep their momentum going and take the leap to become a Super Bowl contender? How about in the 2000 free agency period, signing 37-year-old DN Bruce Smith and 33-year-old cornerback Deion Sanders? New owner Dan Snyder was going into his first full offseason as the owner, and it was clear he wanted this team to take the leap to become a Super Bowl champ. He spent big bucks and brought in 2 legends. The exact number of these 2 contracts were 13 years and $79 million combined. The defense was undeniably the problem during the 1999 season, and, well, they seemingly fixed it. Sure, both guys were old, and Deion Bruce Smith's numbers had certainly been declining, but Deion was just coming off a Pro Bowl year, and you are pairing him with emerging star Champ Bailey and fellow veteran Darrell Green. Dan Snyder would also give a 4-year, $18.25 million to quarterback Jeff George to serve as a backup to Brad Johnson. Let's move to the draft. And remember during the Ricky Williams trade, how the Redskins got the Saints first rounder? That turned out to be the number 2 pick overall, and then Washington made the big balls move to trade up to number 3. Giving up picks 12, 24, 119, and 154 to do so. So, this team had all the momentum, picked up 2 legends, and now have 2 of the top 3 picks in the draft. Absolutely fucking absurd. Those picks turned into linebacker LeVar Arrington and O-tackle Chris Samuels. LeVar Arrington was getting Lawrence Taylor comparisons during the draft process, and Samuels was tasked with bringing back the legendary offensive lines of the Hog days back in the 80s. After the great Champ Bailey pick, they were looking for 2 more home runs to be a force to reckon with for a decade to come. Remember me saying that Dan Snyder signed Jeff George to be the backup to Brad Johnson? Yeah, that was not really the case. Owner Dan Snyder wanted George to become the starter. He told Pro Bowl quarterback Brad Johnson he would wait until signing the rookies to negotiate with Johnson. Well, the rookies were signed, and they even signed Deion Sanders post the draft cycle, and Johnson was not even talked to. Just before the beginning of the season, Johnson publicly acknowledged his low chance of returning to Washington the following season. But at the end of the day, Johnson wanted to prove to Dan Snyder and the rest of the league that he was still a Pro Bowl quarterback. Heading into the 2000 season, this was it. This is the big year. The Washington Redskins had the second best odds to win the Super Bowl. And after a playoff win, spending big time money, and holding 2 of the top 3 picks in the draft, the Skins were certainly ready. But after only 3 weeks and a 1-2 start, more QB drama would ensue as Snyder applied pressure to head coach Norv Turner over starting Jeff George over Brad Johnson. Norv Turner did not do that. The Redskins won their next 5 games. Starting 6-2 showed this team to be a playoff lock. Then it all started to fall apart, with the next 2 weeks being losses. As for the Week 9 game against the 6-1 Titans, they lost by 6 and could not claw their way back from a 22-7 halftime deficit. Quarterback Brad Johnson went down with a sprained knee, which caused Snyder's QB Jeff George to start the following week, and they would lose to the 2-6 Cardinals by 1 point. Jeff George was mediocre. Throwing 2 picks with no TDs on a 53% completion rate was a major contributor to the loss. Now, heading into their bye week, Johnson was still injured, and they were slated to play the 8-2 Rams on Monday Night Football. This was a massive bounce-back game where they won in massive fashion, holding the Kurt Warner-less greatest show on turf team to 3 second-half points and Marshall Faulk to 3.6 yards per carry was a massive win for the defense. Jeff George played well, throwing 3 TDs on a 70% completion rate as Washington improved to 7-4. But unfortunately, this was the last of the Redskins' meaningful wins, as Washington would go on to lose the next 4 games, and a lot happened during those losses. Brad Johnson would come back healthy, but was booed in his comeback game versus the Giants. During that game, both QBs played poorly, and Washington would only lose 7-9. Norv Turner was fired the following day, and Jeff George was named starting QB by interim head coach Terry Robisky. But it was clear whose decision this was. This was owner Dan Snyder's decision. Brad Johnson even called it out himself. George went 1-4 as the starting QB, as in Week 17, Brad Johnson would start in place of the injured Jeff George, and the Redskins would beat the Cardinals in the final game of the season. Oh, the irony. This season was sabotaged by a QB conundrum. Bruce Smith had 10 sacks, Deion Sanders had 4 picks and 9 PDs, LeVar Arrington had shown great promise, and cornerback Champ Bailey made the first of his many Pro Bowls. On the offensive side of the rock, running back Steven Davis was great, earning his second Pro Bowl nod as he ran for 1,318 yards and 11 TDs. The team with all the momentum simply fell apart due to an unnecessary quarterback battle that had split the team. After the season, Deion Sanders, who was still owed an insane amount of money, retired. Brad Johnson left and Washington hired Marty Schottenheimer as the new head coach to try to get the offense where it needed to be, but it did not work. Schottenheimer was fired after an 8-8 season where the offense was bad, even when the defense finally got their stuff together after starting 0-5, as the defense would not allow more than 21 points after their Week 5 loss. Jeff George would only play 2 games during that year and was cut after the season, and Bruce Smith would fizzle out with age, getting the all-time sacks record and retiring after the 2003 season. The team still had great young pieces but could never get it together. LeVar Arrington proved to be a stud, earning 3 Pro Bowl appearances, but he would leave for the Giants in 2006 and had his career cut short by injuries caused by a motorcycle accident. Chris Samuels was a stud too, playing 10 seasons for the Redskins at that left tackle position and was a 6-time Pro Bowler. Champ Bailey went on to be a Hall of Famer, but not in Washington. Bailey was traded to Denver after the 2003 season. This Washington team had all the money, all the draft picks, and all the momentum. But one man's need to start Jeff George ruined everything the team had going for it. Alright, that's the Mega Mix. Let's hope it's good.